So one of the things that we wanted to call out explicitly as we prepare for the assignments and solution, the hands-on part of our second module in digital forensics, is the notion that some of the tools come with very important restrictions or caveats. And actually, I'm going to jump right back to that. I just thought I would point out, I did post the retake, and you have until 9 a.m. Thursday of next week to go ahead and complete that. If you have not submitted a reconciliation yet, please do that before you engage the retake. And I have also posted assignment 2.2, where you create a live Kali USB. And then, and actually there's supposed to be a space here, but I'm having problems with the system where it won't render. So that was part of the delay here, is that I just wanted this to be more readable. I'm also going to update the hash with a link to where the hash is posted, because these versions can change suddenly. And if I post a hash and then 3 days from now you go out there and the SHA-256 hash has changed, I don't want you to be thrown by that and then delay your submission. Does everybody understand what I just related about the first task of assignment 2.2?
Yes.
Okay, so the other thing too is that I would tell you, I use MicroTorrent. Now I only use this temporarily. It's a legitimate tool, but it's also used by hackers to use BitTorrent. The little U here stands for the Greek letter mu. It's usually italicized, right? And it stands for the Greek letter lowercase mu, which is the symbol, the Greek symbol, to signify micro. The metric prefix micro. So, but everybody calls it uTorrent. That's just a common convention. Just wanted to explain that to you so that you are not found guilty of like poor form when you're talking about tools, right? So I use MicroTorrent and I download it from cnet.com because they screen these things for nasties, but there are other sources that have a good reputation for being clean. You may have your own favorite BitTorrent client. I tend to install it, use it, and then take it down if I'm having problems loading Kali images. This is especially true in the UVI network environment or in some hotels where they may block those kinds of requests, and uTorrent is a workaround. I want to strongly urge you to consider removing and uninstalling a BitTorrent client after you're finished with your own personal machine, because it tends to be on all the time and it tends to share all your goodies with other people, and that can be problematic. So I'm going to try to work the formatting of this just to get a space in there so it's a little easier to read. There are 4 artifacts for 3 points. The last task, number 3, involves 2 artifacts, right? You're capturing 2 screens. So after you capture the screen of the hash, you're going to follow the steps listed in there and use Balena Etcher to create a bootable USB drive. And then you'll capture a screen. Now, I want to mention this to you. We stated that creating a live Kali USB, there was a certain feature or function you did not want to include as a practice. Can anyone recall from our previous class what that was?
Promiscuous mode?
Promiscuous, it does start with a P, and promiscuous mode is something that you definitely need to mind also when you turn up a Kali machine for use on the local network. You do want to use promiscuous mode but you want to notify the network administrators or network management staff of what you're doing and why you're doing it so that you can capture. It is a P word though. It's a different word. Thank you for guessing that. It gives us a chance to refresh something else.
Persistence?
Persistence is correct. It's persistence. It is considered a best practice to configure a Kali USB drive or any live any live USB that you intend to use for disk extractions using DD without persistence so that changes cannot be written to the disk. That means you can't update it either. So you want to use a stable distribution, okay? But you want to be able to stand by the fact that your tools were not corrupted while they were being used. That's essentially what we're talking about here. So you're going to capture a screen showing that the USB creation is complete, and that's from the Balena Etcher screen when it says, hey, your USB drive is ready to go. That's the second artifact. Any questions about the second task? Then you're going to use your live USB on your own system by rebooting with the drive inserted into your USB port. You may need to adjust your BIOS to allow a different boot order. Now, if you happen to have disk encryption, you happen to have UEFI and secure boot enabled, if you change the boot order to USB and you still can't boot, you may need to go back to legacy boot modes. But be sure you take a picture of your existing BIOS configuration so that after you boot into the system with a USB, you can put it back. What do I mean? You're putting back secure boot. You're putting back, if it was in there in the first place, you're putting back UEFI if it was in there in the first place. Does everybody understand what I'm saying here?
Can't you just log in, like plug in your USB and then log into the BIOS and then just manually boot through the USB?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. The answer is, it depends on the brand and model. Some brands and models offer a boot option menu when you power it on, and you can press F12 instead of F1 or 2. Some laptops require you to also press the function key when you're trying to, and the window is very tight. Still, in other cases, with newer operating systems, like the later versions of Windows 10 and Windows 11, you have to go in there in the recovery option in Windows 10 or 11 and then select the option to boot from a USB. So you have to go into here and then go into systems and then go into, where is it? Recovery option under Windows 11. In Windows 10, it's in a different place. And you want advanced startup because you want to go into a disk or USB, and you have to do that in order to actually access the BIOS, because it won't even allow you to access the BIOS without doing this step, and then you can select USB. It can be it takes a little bit of persistence, no pun intended, diligence. It takes diligence to get some brands and models, and I'm very glad that you asked that. If you run into a snag, don't hesitate to, take screenshots, request assistance, and so on. Now, once you show the first screen, there's a very quick display that shows a default option that automatically engages, but then in the version that we used last year, it was the third option from the top. It's called forensic mode. So when you use the live USB, you're booting into forensic mode. You're not just booting into Kali. Does everybody see that? So you're capturing the first screen showing you have selected forensic mode, and then the next showing the first screen, the terminal window open, the entry of the command sudo su, and your name typed into the prompt. Now, why am I doing that? Well, believe it or not, we've had some friends in a class that decided to share a terminal screen because, oh, I don't have the time and it's too much trouble on my laptop, and and there were ways to tell that somebody was cheating. So you can't cheat this. If it's your if it's your terminal window and you're typing your name into it, it's a little harder to fake, right? You can't just copy and paste that. Oh, you might be able to do some Photoshop, but it's, again, there are telltale signs. So everybody understand artifacts 3 and 4 for task 3 of the USB prep. Now, one of the uncanny things that happens when you boot your own laptop or PC with that USB, that Kali USB, is that you may notice there's a local hard drive in a window or on the desktop, either. It may be in a window in the filing cabinet when you open up the GUI for file system access, or it may actually be right there on the desktop. It'll show local hard drive Windows. That's a reference to your actual physical hard drive on the host that at this point is inactive and dormant and powered off. You don't want to select it or double click it to open it. That's, as a practice, you just don't want to be click happy. You want to know what that is and why that is, and you don't want to do that. If you get into doing some things and you're curious and you start using tools, we've seen bad things happen. And if it's obvious that you did this, and that's the screen capture that you opened it, you will lose credit permanently, because it shows that you're examining the contents of the disk without doing what first? What are we supposed to do when we're acquiring digital evidence? Are we supposed to begin work on the authentic original digital artifact, or are we supposed to do what?
Make a copy.
Make a copy. That's why this is really important to call out. If you are click happy, like we are by human nature, and you don't understand that this is one of those no-fly zones, all it takes is one of those details to pop up in a window while you're explaining a case, and they got you on the witness stand in a courtroom live in front of an audience. That's far more damaging and embarrassing than losing credit on this assignment. But I'm sincere. You will not get the chance to do it over again. You will not be allowed to resubmit. I will simply nullify your credit with a comment that says, you didn't read the highlighted yellow portion. And see, I'm going to do that right now just to make sure that it's really, everybody sees that I have spaces here, right? Everybody sees that?
Yeah.
The goofiness, right? What in the world? And I have tried this and tried this and tried this.
You see under your highlight button, there's a little line and a plus. If you click the line, it has a divider. The line on the left one. It
The
puts a
line?
yeah, the left one on directly under, yeah.
Horizontal
puts-
line.
Yeah, it puts a divider.
Oh, that's very helpful. Did you learn that when you were doing ITS support?
No, I did it while I was doing my exams on Blackboard.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Hey, shoot me an email and say, I get extra credit. Look, does everybody see this? Irritating. All right, I'm gonna go back in here and fix this real quick. Thank you for the insight. Let's see if this does it. If it helps, right, helps set it off. And this adds non-breaking space. I don't need to add non-breaking space. I need it to be breaking space. Oh, that's easier. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Any questions here? All right, let's talk about the ethical use of forensic resources. So before we start using the tools we're creating, we want to clearly establish the boundaries of our tools. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and download this and open it so you can see it. And I want to walk through this. You're going to enable editing after you download it. And you're probably going to want to adjust the view so that it's nice and wide. And what you're going to do is type your name right here. Your full name, your full proper legal name. And we're going to simulate a physical process with an electronic one. And what you're going to do is insert 2 large A's below if you agree and assent to this understanding of the ethical use of forensic tools, in particular the forensic suite, the forensic mode of Kali. Now, did I say Kali in general? No. Did I say, oh, but the other tools where we can sniff the wireless? No. I'm talking about forensic mode and forensic tools explicitly, right? And when you get started in this profession, you may standardize on Kali, perhaps, but if you do, you're going to want to make sure that there are clear boundaries on how and which pieces of it are okay to fire up, right? So it says, I hereby affirm that I have not shared my Blackboard logon or password with others. I agree that the digital forensic tools and methods provided by CSC 343 instructor, whether commercial products are open source, so there may be other tools that are open source or commercial that we download, will only be used to investigate the digital artifacts provided for the course assignments and solutions. Now, if you have an itch to try this in real life, contact me. I used to say, you know, hey, we're going to learn stuff in class and I only want you to use it in class. But if you have a strong rationale to work forensic matter as a matter of direct professional and technical experience, I don't want you to be worried that signing off on this restricts you from doing it. But I do want you to contact me. I may ask you to email that you know, you have an opportunity to engage with the use of these forensic tools, and it's not in an academic environment, and you respect that the standards of ethical hacking still apply, and you will certainly consult if there's any question about that matter, right? In which case, I'm going to respond and say, good luck, I'm here if you need me. Does everyone understand what I just related here? It's kind of like that scene in the original Spider-Man where his uncle is dying, but before that he says, with great power comes great responsibility. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, so by the actions I take to freely establish my agreement, I affirm that I may also exercise the option to use these tools and methods only on my own personal technology devices and systems at my own risk. I agree to refrain from any and all unsolicited use. See, everybody understand the term there, unsolicited use of these tools and methods for other purposes on any other device, system, or network owned or operated by third parties. This includes UVI, okay, and the UVI network. You don't, please do not. Now, we have had students in my classes, believe it or not, that have used the tools to go on a porn hunting exhibition, a porn hunting safari. My first year teaching at UVI. And what do you think the ITS staff did with that information? They shut down our access to our sequestered research access for the rest of the semester. They crippled our ability to finish instructional activities and research until many months later in the year. Now, I did not pursue I did not pursue disciplinary action against the student. But I warned everybody that the very next time it happened, I would turn somebody into the poster child for how not to be playful on the UVI network, trying to see what I can get away with. Now, I'm mentioning this to you because it is a matter of fact. It actually happened to one of your predecessors. And to everybody in the class, we had to adjust what we did and how we did for the rest of the season. In a word, it was the perfect case for how not to screw up. And this was a person who was getting ready to graduate. And I chose to take the high road, and it was my first year here, and I didn't want to ruin somebody because I wanted to have an invitation to come back after the end of my visiting instructor status, right? I was a visiting instructor that first year. Does everybody understand? Does everybody hear what I'm saying right now? I need you to unmute your microphone. I want every one of you to say, yes, Kareem. Was that a yes, Kareem?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, Suleiman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jadel, anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now if you want to test them, now here's the challenge. These are incredibly exotic tools, and if you want a weapons range where you can freely engage and tear something up, I can set up the equivalent of a digital weapons range, and you can try to hack the planet in a virtualized environment that is isolated from everybody else. So if that's your itch and you need to scratch it, send me an email, please. Or for that matter, if you'd like to engage in undergraduate research for the summer, and you would like to test the limits of these tools to see what they can do with certain configurations for a network, this would be uncharted territory for any undergraduate student at UVI. No one previously has used these tools for ethical hacking or for forensic purposes during undergraduate summer research, paid undergraduate summer research. Why am I taking the quality time to share that comment with all of you? Well, because some of you may aspire to get paid to do fun things over the summer and then share your results with everyone. It's the coolest way to make a living. It's the best job in the world, in my opinion. And it's why I'm at a university right now. Okay. All right. So what do? You finish reading this carefully, the whole thing, right? I say operated by third party. This includes, but is not limited to other family members, friends, fellow students or employees, ex-girlfriends or boyfriends, acquaintances or strangers, or any other person living or deceased. You actually have Facebook accounts that are still active by people who have died. That's not fair game. I'm just saying. And if you were actually interested in doing that to somebody who's deceased on their active Facebook account, ew, it's like somebody going to come back and haunt you. This constitutes the entire agreement for acceptable use of forensic tools and methods. Replace the underscores. I'm talking about this portion right here with either double A if you agree or double D. By inserting my full name in the space provided below, I validate that I alone have affixed my decision to agree or decline of affirmation and agreement. Now, you don't have to agree with it. You can say, yeah, I have other ideas. But you need to declare it up front, okay? And I will not exclude you from other instructional activities on that basis. I'm just saying, okay? I just need you to document that you understand and have read it, right? And if you agree, great. If you disagree, well, at least you read it and understand it. Everybody get me here. You're going to insert your full name here one more time again, and then you're going to save and submit. That's the next assignment. All right. So this is something that I wanted to spend a little time reviewing. The solution. We will discuss the solution that's been posted on Thursday. So we're going to talk about this on Thursday. We'll review. So please be be in class on Thursday, okay? If you look in your study guide, on a basic level, there are two important activities that every forensic expert must be able to do. You have to be able to view the digital resources that you're expected to analyze. And for the purposes of this course, digital resources shall be defined as systems, application, and data, right? DEFRs and DESs, right? That's for both. DEFRs and DESs must possess the capacity to detect changes to digital resources. It may also be considered common sense, but DEFR and DES must work with tools they have been trained to use, and they must work with tools they are authorized to use. Those are two separate and distinctly different concepts. Does everybody understand that being trained to use is not the same as being authorized to use? I need everybody to unmute your mic, and I need an amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
All right. I didn't get everybody.
Amen.
All right. Okay, good enough. Thank you for humoring that. All right, so I just want to check to make sure you're still breathing too. Suppose a DEFR, that's the first responder, or the DES chooses to use Kali for a given forensic task. There are some important considerations. Kali is used for other cybersecurity tasks outside of digital forensics. The following are 5 professional tenets that must be consistently observed and practiced. I want you to read these and tell me if you have any questions on Thursday. Everybody got it? Okay. Now, apart from authorization and training requirements for use of the forensic tools and methods, the selection of tools and methods must be framed with an account of the actors and the environment, including scope and context. You are already aware that a forensic analysis is performed by 3 orderly stages of activity: acquisition, analysis, and reporting. And that's a summary, right? That's just the big 3. However, the scenario or context is paramount. For example, digital resources may not have been used for a malicious, unethical, or illegal purpose directly. Okay? Consider the case where a homicide occurs with a typical weapon. In such cases, now, what do I mean by a typical weapon? What would be a typical weapon used in a homicide? I'm claiming car. You can kill somebody. Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's vehicular manslaughter, but you can kill someone with a car. What are some other typical weapons, right? Are they digital? Is there a technology component to many typical weapons? No.
No.
Not really. In such cases, digital resources may still be relevant as a matter of important context, because they provide critical information about the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and the why. I was thinking at one time of making like a rap or doing like a home, trying to grab a mic and doing a home run. And I thought, no, I'm too old for that. No, I'll mess it up. The 6 W's, right? It used to be called the 5 W's, but there's also how. It is also true that digital resources can be used to perform malicious activities directly, which in most cases requires some level of technical skill. So your perpetrator may have technical skill. That changes the dynamic. You can have non-technical people committing crimes, but they still have technology resources like smartphones or tablets. And there's important context in there that it's inculpatory evidence or exculpatory evidence, right? They must frame what and how the acquisition, so the DEFR and the DES, in order to be effective, have to frame what and how the acquisition is conducted with a context of the suspected unauthorized or illegal digital activity, right? So use of a smartphone with someone who beats someone's skull in with a baseball bat could be the key to an accomplice. And if you're using any resources to commit a crime as an accomplice, you're playing a supporting role. That's illegal, okay? So some thought and reflection about the context is absolutely important. Situational awareness is an understanding of scenario and context. When one considers who may be the suspects, right? So you want to frame this review of the context with three, you want to consider three scenarios. One, actors that don't have any technical skills. Two, actors with significant technical skills. And three, both skilled and unskilled actors in a hybrid scenario, meaning there's an accomplice. Maybe they have a friend that does the dirty work on the computer screen, right? So I'm going to let you review this part. We're going to discuss it on Thursday in greater detail. But one of the things that I want you to understand, and this is critically important, it's called the 5 stages of a malicious exploit. And it also tracks with and maps to something that we see. It has to do with the kill chain. And where is my other reference here? The kill chain. I thought I had stand by. There it is. The kill chain. Okay. So the 5 stages of a malicious exploit track with and map to another framework for how to understand the enemy, knowing your enemy. It's called the kill chain, right? And so there's a reference here, and I want you to understand this. Generically, the kill chain is more elaborate and detailed, but it still tends to follow the 5 stages that you see in the study guide, right? So I want you to be aware of both. This is in the addendum, right? And so you can see this helpful YouTube about methods of malicious hackers. You want to click these links and you want to investigate this. You want to understand these things before you take the assessment. And if you have questions, we can review them on Thursday. We're going to try to wrap up our review of all material on Thursday, including the solution. So Thursday is a big day. Any questions so far?
Yeah. First developed by Lockheed Martin.
So this is a quick video that talks about the kill chain and how a corporation under contract with the US federal government developed this idea of the kill chain. It's basically the 5 stages of a malicious exploit, but with many substages and tasks. And the elegant notion about a kill chain is also that if you break one of the chain links, you prevent the attack. This is something that we've stated previously in other sessions and in other courses. If you can find a way in terms of systems defense to break one of the chains of the kill chain, just one of them, then you prevent the attack from occurring, right? So this is really good stuff. And I would highly encourage you to take the time to review it. Getting back to our study guide, the 5 stages of activity performed by malicious exploits. And all right, so to some degree, some of these stages aren't skillfully executed. Some malicious actors are novices. And so they're, everybody's mileage may vary on that point. A malicious actor first conducts reconnaissance in the vicinity to identify the digital resources suitable for exploitation. So this could be somebody that's exercising social engineering skills physically on the ground, posing as a repairman or woman, posing as a colleague, posing as a contractor, impersonation, right? But they're going to try to surreptitiously or under the cover of another identity, they're going to conduct. And that's an important aspect of stage 1 that is not explicitly stated, but it's one of those pieces of the kill chain, right? And I don't know off the top of my head if, which component of the kill chain would make reference to that, but I'm making reference to it here. This leads to 2, scanning of resource exposures that will enumerate. There's a $64,000 word you hear a lot. Once somebody is in there and they're identifying the digital resources that they want to attack during reconnaissance, then they start taking on serious scanning of the resource exposures so that they can enumerate or further identify, like isolate where the chinks in the armor are, where those resources can be exploited. Any question about this? Hearing none. Number 3, then exploitation follows, where sufficient access is gained and malicious use begins. Okay. So the goal is to identify the exposures and then leverage them to gain access, sufficient access, any access. Any access is a foot in the door. Any access is bad. But that's what they're looking for. If they can just get on the screen, there are other things they can do to elevate their privileges, which leads to the next phase. A malicious actor will work quickly to preserve access so that system changes will not prevent completion of the crime. Now, what are we talking about? You have an uninvited guest. They're going to elevate their privileges and they're going to establish other means of access using that elevated privilege. Again, additional elements that you will see reference to elsewhere, including, but not limited to, the kill chain, right? So elevation. You have to elevate your privileges in order to be able to preserve access. They're going to set up back doors. That's what preserve access means. Alternate logins, alternate accounts, you know, a suspicious but innocuous enough, it's a harmless looking service that's running and it's masquerading as a system service, because there are 27 system services. If you look at services running in Task Manager, OMG, there's like 27 that are just called network service, right? So they're gonna try to preserve access, and there's gonna be an open and running service that's not part of the operating system, but it's masquerading as a part of the operating system. How do you identify it? How would you identify a new and uninvited service running? What could you use for comparison so that it would jump off the screen and bite you in the nose? We've already covered this. Starts with a B. It'll sting you in the nose if somebody doesn't say it. Baseline. Repite usted. Everybody unmute your mic. I want to hear you audibly say one at a time. Jadel, I'll call out your name. Jadel.
Baseline.
Thank you. Kareem.
Baseline.
This is like basic training now. We're shifting gears, right? I mean, it's going to be less dull and academic. We don't want people to hurt themselves. Luke, sound off.
Baseline.
All right. Ray, sound off.
Baseline.
Sulaiman.
Baseline.
Baseline. If you don't have a baseline, you're screwed. I'm just saying, right? Okay, finally, most are wise enough at some point to do what? Some of these malicious hackers, the 5th stage is they're going to cover and conceal their tracks. That last example of changing the name of a running service that's malicious so it blends in with other system services, right? Take a look at Task Manager and scroll down and see the running services. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. 27 of those suckers, probably more than that. At one time I had a clean machine that was running with 67 of them, and it was clean, it was newly installed, right? A lot of weeds to hide in. DEFR, and DES must consider a broader context and scope for investigation whenever one or more accomplices are involved, and you must not assume that a sole actor does not have. This is one of the biggest and most egregious lapses of forensic experts. They get a quick impression and they're like, okay, well, it's usually the husband who kills the wife when they're having problems. You know, it's usually the spouse that kills the other. It's usually the wife that kills the husband because he was cheating, right? No, you can't form opinions up front. It could be a paramour who is framing someone innocently, right? So you have to understand there are people who are also used, do you know, and don't even know they're being used. Oh, she asked me to carry this package in. She handed me a padded envelope and said, this goes in the president's office. He needs to read this, right? Oh, but he's not here today. Well, just leave it for him. So I've told him that I delivered it today. Please help me with this. And people do it. They walk into the president's office, they put the envelope down, and then they know the president isn't going to be in the office for when? 24 hours. So 24 hours later, what is blinking and bleeping inside that padded envelope that has all manner of opportunity to do what, right? Sometimes people are unaware they are accomplices. So it's an unattended accomplice. Situational awareness is a sound pillar of forensics. That's what SA means, situational awareness. And there's a lot to it, okay? We've talked about means, motive, and opportunity before, okay? Now, why does means, motive, and opportunity matter in the long run? When you're determining the guilt and the sentencing of a perpetrator, they have to understand the term intent, the concept of intent. It gets down to premeditation. Has anybody ever heard of the term premeditated?
Yeah.
Premeditated means, oh, you meant to do that. It wasn't an accident. That's why you're going to jail for life. You're not going to jail for a few years for manslaughter. Oh, it was an accident. Oh, it was just an accident. I was cleaning my weapon and my finger slipped and I didn't know it wasn't on safety and it was horrible. It's like, no, here's a text message to your friend saying, hey, you need to invite them over. We're going to settle this score. All I need is 3 seconds and it's done, right? You get a text message that says that on a burner phone. That's the difference between life in prison and letting a criminal who murdered somebody off on good, with good behavior on parole with a third of the time served. Huge difference, right? I'm just saying, that's a reality of what we talk about. Did the suspect have the capacity or the means to do a thing? Was there rationale or motive? And did the latitude of the scenario afford them the space and time or opportunity to commit the crime? These are all elements of the digital landscape, and you need to understand how these work. Now, with this, I'm going to, and we did cover the bit about being able to use forensic tools in an integrated enterprise environment in a domain versus a standalone. We did cover that, correct?
Yeah, we went over this.
I thought we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is one aspect of working the forensic tools. It's a enhancement, or I would call it a force multiplier. That's a military concept that means it greatly enhances the ability of your use of forensic tools, especially tools like EnCase when there's a domain. When you're working with EnCase, if it's a workgroup environment, EnCase is a lot of the tools are restricted and don't work in the same manner. EnCase in a domain environment is amazing. In fact, of all the tools I have ever seen at any time for forensic purposes, EnCase is like the king of the mountain as far as reliability, in terms of reputation in the courtroom, in terms of dependability and integrity of the tools and so on. But it requires a rigorous separate certification to know how to use EnCase. And NCASE often states, you know, hey, if you're operating in an environment apart from a domain, there are limitations to how and where you can apply and use the features in NCASE, and it requires a lot of stuff up front. All right, so I'm going to leave the rest of this. I'm going to leave the rest of this to you to finish review. Most of this is plain English. It's review of your networking concepts from CSC 243. We talk about DNS dependencies, time synchronization. We've already talked about seams. So here we go again, right? Any questions? Does anyone have any interesting questions or comments to share given the information presented?
I do. I'm still drafting up the email for it, but yeah, I am interested to, as you said before, to scratch that itch. Yeah, I'm definitely down to learn how to utilize these tools and essentially just try to unload on that weapons range.
Very well. All right. Would you be amenable to work with an accomplice? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean accomplice. I meant a colleague.
We have the receipts. We got them. All right.
You're gonna edit that part onto the YouTube video?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. The point is, that was just playful. That was a playful remark. Colleague. Yeah, I meant colleague. And this is one thing that, all right. So any other comments? Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad to hear that. And any other comments or questions before we clear?
Not for me.
Okay. Now, this last in green is worth stating as we close out our session, okay? One of your goals is to be able to operate where you don't make matters worse, right? Doctors take an oath. First, do no harm. That's part of their oath, right? Don't make matters worse. Don't kill the patient. That's part of their oath. And they take it very seriously. Thousands of years, time-honored tradition, right? Ultimately, you must account for different operational requirements if a domain SAM is part of the investigation context. By SAM, we mean the accounts are on the domain controllers. You will have access to support with active logons, consolidated system logs by SIEM, and you will need to coordinate the use of live USB tools to avoid alerting alleged perpetrators of forensic engagement. Don't tip off the perpetrator. Just because a domain environment is easier doesn't mean that it isn't fraught with problems. There can be accomplices or supporting actors in the environment, and they don't play a central role with the systems management, but they could be in the mix with tech support, right? So they could have friends. Tech support people have friends, and sometimes friends aren't, well, you got to be careful who your friends are. In any case, the point is that if you're not careful about using the tools in either environment, you can tip off. There can be telltale signs. Oh, something. Oh, I heard where the system is down. What? Who's working on what? Right. So OPSEC, operational security, is another concept that's time honored in the military context, but it's also relevant in the forensic one. You don't want to tip off the perpetrator. Okay. So just remember that as far as situational awareness, what tracks with that hand in glove is operational security, or OPSEC. All right. That's it. I will hit the pause. We'll see you Thursday. Thank you for joining us today.